welcome. My name is Kelly Anderson, and this is Fanimated, an animation fan podcast where we get a chance to geek out about our favorite animated media. This week, Brynn Berryhill and I are discussing the film that sparked the Japanese animation powerhouse that is Studio Ghibli. Yes, Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind is a 1984 sci-fi classic that has a lot to say about our world today. But before we dive into it, I'd like to thank our supporters over on Patreon. This episode topic was voted on by the Fanimated crew, and for just $1 a month, you can gain access to bonus content, vote for upcoming episode topics, and support the production costs of the show. Thanks again to all who make this show possible. Now buckle in and beware of spoilers for Nausicaa, and let's get started and let's get animated. Hello.
Hello. Hi, Kelly.
Hi. Thank you so much for being here. I'm so excited to chat with you.
Of course. Thank you for having me. I love this movie, and I love Miyazaki, and I love talking about global climate change and how we're driving our world into our planet into destruction. It's fine. I'm so excited to be here. It's fine.
It's fine. And it's fun. It's fine.
No, I'm excited to be here. Thanks, Kelly.
Good. Well, I'm so excited to chat with you. We chatted a little bit during our first What You Watchin' episode, but beyond that, you haven't been on the show since last November.
What? Seriously?
Seriously, I just looked it up. Like, you haven't been on since we talked about Princess Mononoke. That's too long.
That is way too long. I thought it was sooner, but you're right. God, that was like 10 years ago.
It was 10 years ago. Anything past March is like 8 years ago. Yeah.
Correct. From when this game of Jumanji started.
Exactly.
Murder hornets and corona and volcanoes erupting and like, it's just so much.
It's so much, but we're here and we're gonna be
celebrating the good animation.
Exactly. We're here to be excited, geeky fans about the things that we love that are here. Yes, we can always look at good things. But it is fitting that Princess Mononoke was the last one you we're on because we are talking about Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind today. Another Studio Ghibli film, another environmentalist plot, and another fierce, wonderful feminist heroine. So,
heck yeah.
We're here. We're all about it. Yeah, usually I start, I haven't actually recorded anything in like a month. What do I do again?
Good.
No, because...
the reason why it feels like it hasn't been that long is because we've been doing the live streams.
Yes. Okay. Thank you for mentioning that.
Yeah, we've done 2 live streams, so I'm like, wait a second, what do you mean November? That doesn't seem right, because we've done live streams. Okay,
we've done live streams. We did 2 live streams that are available on Facebook right now. Yes. We had done another one on Twitch, and we're gonna do another one on YouTube at some point. We're kind of trying all of our different platforms. So follow us on social media at Fanimated Podcast, Instagram, Facebook, wherever, and we will let you know when and where we are live streaming.
And let us know what you want to hear and watch and stuff, because we did Miraculous Ladybug for 2 whole sessions, and I think we have about 8 hours of all of the griping that didn't make it onto the podcast in total. And love. We love Miraculous Ladybug.
We do.
So many different emotions mixed in. But
yes.
We don't know what's next. We have a couple ideas, but if you have something that you'd like to see a live stream of, please let us know.
Well, I already have a suggestion, and that is to watch Wizards, the new Guillermo del Toro series coming to Netflix August 7th.
Ooh. So we would all watch it together for the first time?
Yeah.
That sounds awesome. Yes.
So that is August 7th. Definitely be ready for that because I am so excited. I am so excited. Regardless, why did we talk about, oh, right, because it's been so long since you've been on
forever.
the show, and it's been a while since I've recorded something because the last few have been ones that I recorded like way back in June. I recorded a ton of them at once, and then I've been releasing them. And even next full-length episode is another one that I recorded during that session. So I haven't actually recorded a full-length episode in over a month.
Woo!
But we're here because the Patreon... I'm starting over.
Patrons. The Patreon patrons. They patronized us.
They did. They patronized us into talking about Nausicaa, the Valley of the Wind. It is what they voted on for us to talk about. So thank you to all of our amazing patrons. We have a whole bunch of new people on there, and I love you guys so much. The Fanimated crew over on patreon.com/fanimated. That's where it's at to vote for upcoming episodes and get cool stuff. Like bonus content and stickers and all sorts of fun things. So, are you, we're finally actually going to get started about Nausicaa, the Valley of the Wind, what?
Finally! Woo! Just like, but wait, there's another side tangent that we need to go on, like probably 5 more before we get to the actual episode. It's fine. Just hang in there.
It's fine.
So, yeah.
Right.
I love Nausicaa. I actually had the manga, like the original manga series,
Really?
and a kid ran off with them.
Oh,
I
no.
was letting a kid read them, and they ran off with them over the summer, and I never saw them again. So,
So
I
sad.
used to have it, and it's a beautiful manga.
Yes.
But I really appreciated the way that they put it into movie form. And I wouldn't be able to do a comparison at this point because I don't remember the manga well enough. But it was really good.
Yes. And I definitely, when we're talking about production, I'll bring up the manga again because there's just kind of like a little backstory about that, which I think is really fascinating.
Ooh.
Did you watch the anime first, or did you read the manga first?
I watched so because of my short-term memory, it wouldn't have mattered.
Got it.
Because I have such an awful memory. If I watched a movie a year or two ago and I rewatch it now, chances are I don't remember what happened.
Mm-hmm.
So even rewatching it this time, there were still some things that I hadn't remembered about it that were like, oh, who dies? No. Who's that girl in the window? Gosh, that's really like engaging, and that's horrifying, but so like every time's a new time.
Every time's a new time. Indeed. And I think that's true of anything you read or watch or play, because we are all, as people, we become different people throughout our lives. And so every single time you watch something, you are a different person watching it. So you're going to glean different things every single time, which I think is fascinating.
Well, I definitely, because so I don't want to go back to Princess Mononoke like a whole ton, but I gotta say, watching Princess Mononoke as a teenager, watching Princess Mononoke now, especially after going through an environmental philosophy class, environmental ethics class, made a huge difference on how I saw the movie. And I think that, like, being in the middle of a pandemic and watching Nausicaa is a trip.
Yes.
And being in the middle of America during this pandemic, watching Nausicaa is a trip, I gotta say.
It is. It is incredibly different watching it in this historical context that we are living in.
Yes, agreed. So yeah, I totally agree with you. But also, I wouldn't have remembered it anyway. So.
Right. So Princess Mononoke is kind of labeled as the first Studio Ghibli film. However, a little context before going into synopsis. I had a lot of the people involved that would be a part of Studio Ghibli, but it was actually made before Studio Ghibli was founded. It was actually the movie that kind of kick-started them into being able to make Studio Ghibli because it was such a commercial success. And so they just kept going. And so now we have all of these amazing Ghibli films. So even though it wasn't technically under the Studio Ghibli label, it still is kind of considered as such.
Well, and didn't they release a like super cut and different version called Warriors of the Wind?
For Western audiences.
Yeah.
Yes, and it was completely different. They cut out a ton of scenes.
Yeah. And then Miyazaki was super hesitant to do anything in the States after that.
Mm-hmm. So nowadays, of course, if you go watch it, it will be the full English dubbed version, and it's beautiful. But yeah, originally they had cut a lot of things, and that can be, it's less common now, but it's definitely something that Miyazaki has struggled with throughout his career. Because, you know, he's as an artist telling a story, he has all the pieces in place where he wants them to be. And to have someone come and slice and dice it is just like, I can imagine how detrimental that feels, you know?
I can't. No.
Exactly. Just no. So the basic synopsis of Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind is it is a post-apocalyptic world in which a toxic jungle has taken over the environment. It is this beautiful yet deadly forest that is full of creatures and plants and wildlife and these giant bugs that are kind of terrifying. And there are all these deadly plants. And so if a human goes in, they have to wear a mask and they have to be really aware.
What? Wait. Kelly, but then they won't be able to breathe. How do they breathe with a mask on? I don't understand. I'm sorry.
Nausicaa proving it's cool to wear a mask since 1984.
I can't tell you how many times watching it, it's like, oh, where's your mask? And I would just put in these little jibes of, oh, they're going to wear a mask? What? Don't take off your mask. Yeah.
We should all be this outraged.
We really should. Sorry, continue.
So, this toxic jungle has taken over the earth. Humanity is dwindling in numbers because of this toxic jungle. And so a lot of kingdoms are trying to, destroy it, trying to get rid of it, trying to figure out how to survive, like with this continuously growing new ecosystem. Brings us to the Valley of the Wind, where they're right along the sea. They have a beautiful forest and all of this wind that blows through this valley that protects them from the poison. So they work to live in harmony with the nature that they have. They have a lot of natural elements that keep them safe, and so they are safe from the toxic jungle, although, there's still that threat that looms about that because it has kind of taken over so many cities and places. Nausicaa is our fantastic feminist princess who is just like the hero of the valley. She's just like the best role model. Like, she just like cares about her people, and she cares about the environment, and she does everything she can to lead. She's a very good leader. She's just a very positive influence.
And something that I noticed is that the men treat her as their fearless leader. irregardless of how she handles situations. So like Nausicaa is very peaceful. She doesn't want to hurt the bugs. She doesn't want to hurt people. And so, oftentimes you get this toxic masculinity idea of like the men won't follow a woman because she's soft and blah, blah, blah. But all of the people of Nausica's people, all of her I don't know, what would her kingdom?
I don't know.
Villagers, thank you. I was trying to find an appropriate word. So all of her villagers look to her and take her advice and take her seriously, especially when they see that her peaceful way of doing things work. And they're willing to protect her and fight for her way of doing things, which I think is a really powerful thing. And I didn't even realize how powerful that was until I was like, yeah, she is a super powerful feminist and the men of her village follow her. And I think that something about being a woman in America currently makes that striking, as it shouldn't be. It shouldn't be striking.
Yes.
It shouldn't be out of the norm, but it feels that way.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yes.
There's no dissent. There's no, should we follow her? Everybody is behind her. All of her villagers are behind her. And that is super refreshing.
So refreshing. And just the beginning of Miyazaki's, forward thinking about female characters. He, throughout his career, just creates character after character, females that are so empowering and just fantastic and feminine in their own ways. And Nausicaa is the leader of all of his characters. She's the first one, and it's fantastic.
Both in Nausicaa and Princess Mononoke, there is a potential for romance. There is a companionship, and it does not end in like a relationship.
Yes.
It is a relationship, but it is not a fulfilled, romantic, intentional relationship. It is an intentional relationship with romantic feelings, potentially, that end well. Because I'm even reading into her liking the prince. But I think of Princess Mononoke, and I think of this, and there is a definite setup that is very indicative of princess stories and fairy tales and things like that, and he doesn't follow through, and it makes me so happy.
Yes.
That he's like, no, they have better things to do right now.
Yeah, like they're kind of in crisis.
They don't have, not even that, but they don't have time for you. They don't have time to have a boyfriend. They need to, like, get stuff done. And I super appreciate that. Saying that it's okay not to have the lead protagonist fall in love, right?
Yes, and even if it's still like the start of their relationship that I totally see happening in the future, but it shows that the happy ever after, like the ending doesn't have to be with a guy. And like Asbel at the end even like comes and swoops her up, and it's super cute, but like they have all these, it's not the end of the film. There's no kiss, there's no, yes. It's like they have clearly developed a relationship together throughout the film, and they have both changed, and they have both developed and grown together, and it's very refreshing to, I mean, guys, this was 1984, and they were like, you know what, she's not like a damsel in distress, and Asbel has to save her, and two, they don't have to like end up together for it to be fantastic, Well,
think of any action movie that has a guy in it. Like, there's sometimes, a lot of times, there's a woman who is a piece on his mantle for the end, that he has achieved the final level or whatever, but it doesn't, nobody's angry if Captain America doesn't have a sweetie, or nobody's angry if the Hulk doesn't have a romantic interest. Nobody's angry about that. Nobody's frustrated about that. So why would, and through that lens, we reverse it and we look at how female characters are treated. Like going back to, I know Core is coming out soon, and I have big beef with Nickelodeon about Korra. Did we talk about this on the What You Watchin'?
I don't think so.
Yeah, Nickelodeon forced them to give Korra romantic interest in the first season.
Yes, I do remember
And that is a big part of why it feels so dissonant, because Korra was not meant to have a romantic interest at that point. It felt forced because it was. But have Aang, and there were only slight hints of romance at the beginning of the first season of Avatar: The Last Airbender.
Mm-hmm.
But it's fine because he's a boy, right? So you look at Miyazaki making these really femme-forward choices.
Yes.
Of not having them end up together and not having this like happily traditional classic princess happily ever after.
Mm-hmm.
And I think when I was little, I was frustrated by it, and now that I am older, I am so happy about it.
Same.
Because I know now. I know how conditioned I was when I was a kid by all of the rest of the movies around me. You know?
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
It's a very refreshing take compared to the Disney princess formula.
Yes.
Which I would argue the Disney princess formula continues to change, but it still has very deep roots that it is still trying to grow out of.
The only Disney princess that does not have a romantic interest that I can think of is Elsa.
And Moana.
And that's true. Thank you. Elsa and Moana. I would argue that those are the two princesses that they left alone. And I would also argue that in Frozen 1, which came out before Moana, the reason they could leave Elsa alone is because they had Anna have a romantic relationship.
I would agree. Yeah.
Which is still frustrating, but the success of Elsa without a man probably paved the way for Moana to have absolutely no romance in it whatsoever, which is the best.
Absolutely the best. Absolutely. I agree. So we have all of our characters. They're living in this crazy post-apocalyptic world. And what is the inciting incident? Well, a giant ship crash lands in the Valley of the Wind, bringing with it death and destruction and war and horribleness. So there are two other countries in this story, the Tolmekians from Tolmekia and Pedjite, the Pedjites. So the Tolmekian airship crashes, and Nausicaa has these last moments with the Pedjite princess who was taken captive from the Tolmekians. And so basically there's this war going on between the Tolmekians and the Pedjites, and both of them believe their war is justified. They believe they are fighting to protect humanity. But what they're fighting over is this giant power of this ancient warrior. And it's this, 1,000 years ago, these giant warriors came and destroyed civilization, and there's one left. There's one that's been dormant. And the Tolmekians want to use it to destroy the jungle for good, and so they can rebuild humanity. The Pedjites want to keep it away from the Tolmekians because they fear that the Tolmekians would, and rightly so, they fear that the Tolmekians would use the warrior to take over the entire world and, kill them.
But also, both of these people are planning to use the warrior in order to either prevent something from happening or to do something. They're both planning to use the warrior to fight.
Yes.
That's a big issue within it, but continue. We'll talk about it later.
So after the ship crash lands, everyone perishes in that crash. The Tolmekians come after their ship and kill the king, kill Nausicaa's father, and kind of take everyone in the village hostage. So Nausicaa has to kind of do whatever is asked of her by them because she doesn't want them to get to harm the villagers.
So a big thing about this scene of the villagers being rounded up is the language that the woman who's in charge of the Talmekians, was it?
Yes, that's Talmekians.
Yes, the Talmekians, the head woman's wording. And it was, we're not savages that came to massacre your people. We're here to talk. But this is directly after they have killed the king in his sick bed, in his deathbed. He was already sick, but they went and they killed him. Nausicaa lost her cool and showed that she's like a warrior princess. I love that scene because she just goes all out and takes out like their entire guards, all of the guards in the room, and it's just amazing. And it really sets up that she has a power that she is refusing to use because she does not believe that it is correct. So she's trained. She's not soft because she is weak.
Right.
She is soft because that is strength to her.
Exactly.
Yeah, and so I love that they set that up that way. But the way that she then goes out to the villagers and says, like, we're not savages, which also is a slur. We're not here to massacre your people. We're here to talk. We want peace. In the name of peace, this and that and the third. And it is so dissonant to what is happening. They have guns to the villagers and things. And it really reminds me, so I live in Minneapolis. And just recently we had police with rubber bullets pointed and shot people and nurses and medics. They shot them with rubber bullets and sprayed them with tear gas and said, this is all in the name of peace. All we want is peace, as they are actively hurting the people of Minneapolis and all around the country. And it is striking how dissonant it looks and feels. Using that vocabulary, it makes your skin crawl to hear it that way, right?
Absolutely.
So that got under my skin quite a bit, especially in this time and place, right?
Yeah, it's terrifying regardless of what's happening in the real world, but it's definitely watching those scenes, this is wrong. They're, completely manipulating the situation, and they might say they're there for peace, but again, all of their guns and tanks are pointed at these innocent villagers. So the Talmekians decide to leave the warrior that was in the crashing ship there because they can't move it, and it will be brought to life there in the Valley of the Wind. They take Nausicaa with them as a hostage, but end up getting shot down by Asbel. So basically sets them on this journey to... What I love is that Nausicaa is kind of the mediator and the neutral party in a way between these two warring kingdoms, but she is here to fight the larger fight, which is to protect the jungle and to prove that humanity can live with the jungle. So ultimately what happens is the Pedgites capture a baby Ohm, which is one of those giant bugs, and leads all of the Ohm to the Valley of the Wind where the Talmekians are, so that the Ohm will crush the Talmekians, but it would also crush Nausicaa's hometown and all of her people. So she frees the baby Ohm and brings them back, and she just has this way with the nature and with animals and is able to protect everyone, and she kind of ushers in this era of peace and harmony with nature and humanity.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. That scene with the baby Ohm that has been shot with harpoons several times and dangled above the earth as they're flying by is visceral.
Oh, yes.
Especially when... if we go back to the beginning, I have notes. When we go back to the beginning of the movie, the first thing in the movie is you see these muted tones and very like sepia and grays and browns and such, except for the poisonous gas and spores, which are purple and pink. And that is a really cool color contrast. And you think at first, you're like, oh, that's a bad thing. But as we move on, we find out that the spores and everything is indicative of something completely different. But the forest, the one of the first things you see is this beautiful forest. And you see the calm, and you see the shell of the Om before anything else. Before you see the how scary the creatures are, besides maybe the explanation of the apocalypse, like you see the beauty and the peace and the stillness, the very Miyazaki whimsicalness of this forest. And so he's introducing that this is a thing of beauty before he introduces how scary the Om can be.
Yes.
Which I think is... Oh, and so then the Om goes crashing through and is super scary. But she is able to calm it with a whistle, and she knocks it out in order to kind of reboot the Om a little bit and kind of get it out of its rage and bring it back to the forest. And I think that it would be very different if he had introduced the scary Om first, before introducing how beautiful its carcass was and how shell was, and how beautiful the forest was.
Yes. Nausicaa spends time in the forest, spends time just looking at it. She comments on how beautiful things are. And then you cut to Lord Yupa, who is fighting against the forest and, fighting for his life and running from this Om that is after him. So it is a great contrast, and also a purposeful moment in the film. And I'm really glad you brought that up, because it's true. It makes such a huge difference that we are entering the story from Nausicaa's perspective in that way, instead of just through Lord Yupa. Although I will say that there, at the very, very beginning, even before that, we do at least see a dying city, a city that has been destroyed or left to ruin, I guess, because of the jungle. So we do see some of the destruction that it has caused to the world. But we don't see the frightening version of the Om until later, which is purposeful.
Well, and first impressions are super important. And if we had seen the scary Om before we saw the beauty, we would be fighting an unconscious bias already. And that's why unconscious bias are so hard to fight against, is because it's already there. And that impression has already been made, and anything that you introduce after it is fighting it. And fear is a lot easier to recognize than beauty.
Yes, absolutely.
So I think that it was really, like I said, it's really good that he introduced the beauty first, because it primed us to see the beauty more than and accept the fear, because we have to, because that's the way that our brains work, but to be able to see the beauty as well. And then Nausicaa has actually brought a bunch of the spores back to her village and planted them in soil that isn't toxic, and given it water that is purified. And they are not actually, the plants aren't poisonous, it's the soil that's poisoned. And the kid who Shia LaBeouf plays, what's his bucket?
Asbel.
Yeah, him. He's like, what? And later in the movie, when Nausicaa is explaining this to him, he's like, what? But I don't understand who could have polluted the entire earth. And I just sadly cackled.
It was humanity. Good job.
Great job. But like, it was a very interesting perspective tilt of, the plants are literally absorbing the toxins that we have given them to purify our world for us.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Or purify the world that we destroyed. Maybe for itself. Maybe not for us, but Yeah.
Yeah. And then I say we, but humanity in this story, again, is like, oh, this forest is, they don't realize that this jungle is actually saving them. And so they're fighting it and trying to destroy it. And it's like, no, you have to let it be. You have to let the earth take time to heal. And no one understands it except Nausicaa.
And if they hadn't tried to burn down the forest the first time, because they talk about how, like, X amount of years ago, people tried to burn down the poisonous forest, the toxic forest, and then it spread way farther. And so if the people had left well enough alone and let it do its thing, then slowly the forest would have made its way across the earth. Hypothetically, the forest would have made its way across the earth over generations and generations, but what is left would have been purified.
Right.
So, but instead, they kept poking the fire and poking the spores, literally, and spreading it, and then all of a sudden, their livable world is shrinking because they're the ones who threaten the forest.
Yeah, exactly.
Humanity.
Humanity. We never learn.
No, we don't.
In addition to, obviously, the environmentalist voice in this film, there is also the classic Miyazaki anti-war sentiments very clearly resonating in this story, because, again, Nausicaa is like... she sees more than the war between these two kingdoms, and she understands how trivial it is and how ridiculous it is that these people are killing each other instead of working together to, protect the rest of humanity.
Right. And there's something really special about how she's introduced to is it a fox squirrel? The way that she's introduced to them, the Picard is like, oh, well, be careful because, they're really feisty, essentially. And so she, puts her finger out and it bites her hard. And she just takes it because she understands that the nature of fear is aggression. But once it realizes that she's okay, it like stops and licks her finger for her, like, and being like, I'm sorry, and is her companion again. And I love that. It shows a great wisdom on her part.
Oh, absolutely.
Oftentimes when you're talking about pets or something, you hear, if a dog bites you, you bite it on the ear to assert dominance or whatever, and she's not asserting dominance, she's asserting friendship and understanding and kindness and empathy.
She's showing that she is not a threat to it.
Yeah, I think that's super important. It goes as far as like to the earth as well, because if you take a look at the plants, they can show that they're not a threat. Like she had proven that they are not a threat. They are a result of violence. And so there are signs that things that seem threatening to us aren't a threat. You just need to stop and listen, or stop and allow things to settle, I just appreciate the wholeness of that. And how she handles the forest and the fox friend and everything. It's just beautiful.
I think you said it well when you pointed out that she has a lot of wisdom. That is her leading trait, I think, in all of it, is that she is wise, she is patient, and she is still. Whereas everyone else around her is frightful and aggressive and just jumps to conclusions, jumps to action instead of being patient.
Yeah, definitely.
So I really, really love this film, and I can't remember which order I watched the Studio Ghibli films in. Like, I feel like I know Howl's Moving Castle was one of the first, but I feel like Nausicaa was maybe one of the first as well. And I've always really, really, really loved it, like, comparatively with other Ghibli films. But this time, for whatever reason, I was like, you know what? It doesn't feel like my favorite right now. And I think the reason why is because it feels too relevant. I'm a little bit like, man, this is some heavy stuff, and it feels like I'm already living this, and it's beautiful, and I do love the characters, as we already talked about, and I love this story. But yeah, it just feels it feels heavier than normal.
Yeah, there have been a few films that have been a little hard to watch recently, and making the connection between the George Floyd protests and the police and what happened to Nausica's Valley is especially really heavy once it clicked, because it didn't click until I was talking to you on the podcast. And I fear for the earth daily. So this is a hard one to watch right now. Yeah. So, Kelly, tell us happy things about the production.
Okay, Brynn. So, as I said, this is kind of the first Ghibli film, although not, because although Miyazaki directed it, Studio Ghibli was not created till after this film was released. So although it wasn't the first Ghibli film, it did involve a lot of the same people. So Miyazaki directed, Isao Takahata was producer, who then later with Toshio Suzuki purchased the studio that they used for Nausicaa and turned it into Ghibli Studios.
And Disney had to sign like a promise that they wouldn't cut down super hard like the first rendition of this, right? I found it. Miyazaki demanded that any new licensor for his movies be contractually bound to do no edits whatsoever aside from straight translation and dub. Disney, who bought the rights to all Miyazaki's movies except Lupin III, has honored this stipulation.
That's amazing. I love that. And that should be every international distribution. This is also the first film that is a collaboration between Miyazaki and Joe Hisaishi, who is the composer on the film and the composer on many other Studio Ghibli films, and is an absolute genius. Can I just, round of applause for the music, please? Yes.
It is beautiful. It really helps to bring you into the whimsy of Miyazaki's films.
Absolutely. It really brings you into these fantastical worlds that he creates. I wanted to mention, too, that you had mentioned the manga, and so for those of you who don't know or who aren't aware, most anime films and television shows are based off of published works, including manga, light novels, etc. And Nausicaa of the Valley Wind is no exception. When Takahata originally pitched Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind, studios were like, no, there's no manga connected with this. There's no proof that there's an audience for this, basically, is what it comes down to. If a manga is popular, then that means there's an audience for it, and that they can, collaborate with boosting sales on manga and boosting sales on other products. Animation is a business just like any other, and they can't just create a work because it's a genius animator with a great story. They have to, make something that they are sure will turn a profit. So, in response to that, Takahata was like, Miyazaki, just let's make the manga. So they did. It's like, you won't let us make our movie? Fine, we'll make the manga and then you can let us make the movie.
I didn't even realize that. That's a lot of work.
Isn't it, though?
That's so much work.
So thankfully, it all turned out all right, and then Miyazaki was able to make his works once they had their own studio and they could do whatever they wanted.
Right. Get to that point where you don't have to make a manga for every film that you want to make.
Right. The other little story I wanted to bring to light, which I really, really love, about halfway through the film, they were behind the schedule because, of course, Miyazaki has way too high standards. And they needed more animators to work on it. So they put an ad out, and this young man walks in and goes directly to Miyazaki's office and just directly puts his storyboards in Miyazaki's hand. Miyazaki looks at them and hires this guy. And it was Hideaki Anno, founding member of Gainax, and who later wrote and directed Neon Genesis Evangelion.
Oh! Wow. Yeah.
Uh-huh. And so Anno was assigned to draw the warrior's attack sequence at the end of the film when the warrior comes to life and then falls apart. And a lot of people regard that as a high point of the film, and the giant warrior moves in such a unique way, and it's just very clear that from the early on in his career, he also had a lot going for him, and it's just very fun to see earlier works of animators and storytellers who go on to create such classical pieces like Neon Genesis Evangelion. So very cool.
It makes sense knowing that, because it's very Evangelion-like.
It is like a big monster. Yeah.
Now that you mention it, I'm like, oh yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. I see it now. Yeah.
Giant apocalyptic humanity destroying monster. Wow.
Well,
the connections.
I think also we kind of have to take a step back and appreciate that this came out in the 80s. Yes. And that we have Attack on Titan now. We have so many Evangelion, mm-hmm. right? We've got so many other manga and anime now that have come out with those proportions. But if this is before Evangelion, then I would say this was probably not a scale that they were used to seeing.
No.
I would argue that this is a bigger scale than they were used to. We might have become a little desensitized at this point.
Yes. But at that time, like, that was a huge scene in the film, a very impactful one, to see this giant monster rising from the ground, for sure. So it is just super great to watch this film and to see where it all started, and now we have all these Studio Ghibli films to love and adore. I will still stand on my opinion that Nausicaa is probably my favorite Ghibli girl in the entire Studio Ghibli lineup. I will say she is one of the best, if not the favorite for me.
I think she's super up there for me. Again, the older I get, the more I identify with Mononoke at this point, but
yeah.
Just go get them. But I think Nausicaa is one step down from where Mononoke is, I think.
I'd argue she's one step up, but, you know.
No, that's fair. I think...
Because she actually likes humans, you know? She's going to protect the humans and the natural world. Like, Mononoke is just about saving the natural world, and Nausicaa is about trying to keep both living in harmony, you know? I
think that Nausicaa and Mononoke came from different situations, though.
Oh, absolutely. I'm not arguing that, but...
Yeah. No. But, like, I think that Nausicaa has a privilege that Mononoke didn't.
Yes.
I would argue that Nausicaa was given the privilege of seeing human kindness, while Mononoke had always seen the dark side of humanity and the badness and the underbelly. I would argue that that's a privilege thing, because being somebody who is white passing, I have seen a lot more kindness from a lot more people than somebody who is not white passing. And it's a privilege that I get to see a lot of those beautiful things consistently from a lot of different people, whereas somebody who isn't white passing might see a heartier dose of racism and a heartier dose of the underbelly of society. Whereas Mononoke saw no goodness from people until she met what's his bucket.
Ashitaka?
I'm not good with names. We've established this.
Well, Ashitaka is definitely the best boy in the Ghibli franchises. So
I don't know. I hope that I'm not saying this from a place. I realize, again, saying that I'm a white passing Armenian mixed girl, that I see through things through a privileged lens. So if somebody else has a different perspective, please let me know, because I want to learn. But it's just a thought that came to mind, that they come from different places of seeing the goodness of humanity.
Okay, so here's my other point then, because I love this debate. Yes, they come from different places, but also Nausicaa is very clearly anti-violence, and Mononoke is okay with violence, and she is deeply pulled into this world of violence, and she is part of who Ashitaka has to save. Ashitaka and Nausicaa have more in common, because they are the equal, they are the neutral parties in these wars. And Mononoke is very clearly on a side in the war. She goes into that village being prepared to give her life to kill somebody. And she is filled with darkness, in my opinion, and like, she's fighting for something honorable, but she's fighting a dishonorable war.
And this is a really current, this is current, actually. So Trevor Noah, because we just had riots. Imagine that. So Trevor Noah made a really good point, that there is a societal contract. The contract says that, if you do X, then you get Y. X will not hurt you as long as you do not hurt X, right? There's this contract of how society works. And over and over, that contract has been broken for people of color. Over and over, some people of color have built entire businesses that people who are racist have burned down and not had any justice for. The people who burn them down do not go to jail like an arsonist. The people who murder and are really awful to people of color are not taken to justice. And so when that social contract is breached, what do? When peaceful protests like Nausicaa has done doesn't work, what if nobody ever listened to Nausicaa? Again, Nausicaa had people who were listening to her because of that privilege of where she was born. Mononoke has never had that. Mononoke has only been shown evil of humanity. And so I stand with Mononoke in that, not in that we need to kill people or, eat the rich, but I stand with Mononoke in that you need to draw a line when that contract is being broken, when people are going in and burning the forest, when people are going in and killing her family systematically, when there is a genocide of her family happening, you need to make it stop. And nobody has heard her before, and nobody would continue to hear her until she had a person of privilege come and be that person to stand up for her as well as the humans.
That right there. That's it. Like, can I just say, I love how our debate about Nausicaa versus Mononoke has turned into a debate about, like, the current political situation.
It's true.
But it's so true. It's so good.
Yeah.
And, me as a white girl.
Yeah.
Again, I clearly come from a very, privileged place.
Yeah.
And I hope, no one is feeling left out in our conversation.
And if you are, please let us know so that we can bring you into the conversation, because we want your voice.
Yeah, fanmatedpodcast@gmail.com is our email. Please feel free to email us.
Yes, please.
So, because again, and I'm not arguing that, but I still believe, looking at Princess Mononoke as a film, or as we are now talking about, the political climate. I feel like, yes, Ashitaka comes into a situation full of darkness. And there's no easy way out of it. But Ashitaka tries his best to bridge communication between both parties peacefully. Again, which is why I like Nausicaa more, because Nausicaa is that gap, is that bridge, and Mononoke is at the beginning of the film, and she grows, but she is still in that pit of darkness and anger and hate. Both sides are filled with hate, and Ashitaka comes, and that's the whole point. You listen to our Princess Mononoke episode, please, because that was the whole point of the film. Remember, like we talked about how Ashitaka solves it with love, okay? Love is because everyone else was filled with hate, and Ashitaka brings love and understanding and compassion, and suddenly the world changes for the better, and finally these things are brought to compromises. It's so fantastic. Everyone, I'm just gonna go watch Princess Mononoke again. I hope everyone else does too.
Yeah, me too. So here's the deal. I would love for not to be Nausicaa, to be Ashitaka. We'd love for that to work. But who's our Ashitaka, and how many times have they failed already? Who is the person who has gone and tried to be the bridge over and over and over and over and over again? So I think our ideals are actually line up. Like, if I could fix all of this in a Nausicaa or an Ashitaka way, I would. But if you remember in Mononoke, I don't want to spoil anything, but it takes something really big and really disastrous for the humans to wake up. And then they do wake up. But we're in the middle of a pandemic with people being put out on the streets and being homeless, and the tent cities that are up in our parks are being demolished, and homeless people are not being given anywhere to go, and people are losing their jobs, and so our big explosion has happened, and nothing has been there to bridge the forest and the people. Something awful has happened to our entire world, and still nothing is happening. And so I think my love of Mononoke isn't from my ideal, it's from my reality.
Interesting. I love that. Yeah.
So, but yeah, I want for Ashitaka to come. I want for Nausicaa to be here. I just don't have hope that they are here and in place. And so I identify more heavily with Mononoke because of that. Yes.
That is where, yeah, absolutely. That's where you come from. And
so we agree. We agree on what would be best, I think.
Yes, absolutely.
And what the ideal is. And I think I really want to watch this again, open to being taken into the fantasy of Nausicaa making peace, and being open to the fantasy of the humans and the animals making peace and living and coexisting. I really want to watch it again and look at it from that lens.
Absolutely. And truly, just like with all of Miyazaki's films, there are hard things, there are deep things in his stories and in his narratives, but ultimately he is always sending a message of hope
and love and peace.
Yeah. Yes. So if you haven't already,
and that's why we love watching them,
watch all of them. Yeah, that's why they resonate with so many people. That's why we love them, and that is why they're classics.
Agreed.
I'm gonna cry over here.
I'm already close to tears. Kelly, thank you so much for having me on and having these conversations. It's so hard and so good.
Thank you, Brynn, for being here. And it's my pleasure to be able to discuss these films and these stories in the way that they are meant to be, you know, embraced. Like, we have so much to, like, audience members, I believe truly, like, art is not art without an audience. And we bring something to the story of Nausicaa. Like, we are coming in who we are now, in the context we are living in now, and we can go to these stories and we can see something new, and we can delve deeper into what it means to us right now. And that's what I always think is fascinating. That's why I love talking to people about the shows that they love and the stories that they resonate with, because it shows so much about who they are and how they understand and perceive our world. And it's so different for everyone because every single person is so different. And I love these conversations so much, Brynn.
Yay! I'm so glad.
As always, Fanimated is a celebration of animation fans and animation stories, and how we can better understand our world through these narratives.
Yes.
And better understand ourselves. Like, I learn new things about myself every time I make a podcast episode.
I learned something new about myself and about the animated works every time I do a podcast with you too. Like, I learned something about myself. I learned something about the work and the art, and I gained different perspectives from other people, and maybe even reorient and differentiate my reality from my hope, which I think is the big thing that I've taken away from this conversation. Is there's my reality and there's my hope, and I really want to chew on that later and chew on it now, and like continue to process that and let it linger.
Yes, that's so good, Brynn. I love it. Definitely let me know what else you're chewing on and meditating on. And listeners, like, if we've like brought up some things that you have, you know, you've got some thoughts too, again, let us know at fanimatedpodcast@gmail.com. I'm always willing and ready to chat with you guys, and I love hearing your stories as well, because again, everyone has a different perspective, and I love that.
Yeah, and I want to hear other voices too. Like, I'd love to be able to know what's going on with you guys and how you're processing everything too. So
exactly.
Kelly, let me know what they say.
I will. Yes, absolutely.
Awesome.
Thank you so much, Brynn. This has been a blast and always so enlightening, and just thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. I always love coming on and talking with you, and gain so much from having these conversations. And to all of our Fanimated fans, I love you all. Black Lives Matter, and peace out.
Peace out. We'll talk to you later. Bye. Thank you so much for listening. Brynn and I had some bonus discussion that is available at patreon.com/fanimated. And thank you again to everyone who already supports the show. Follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Fanimated Podcast to stay up to date with all things animated. And don't forget to leave a rating and review telling us what you'd like us to watch next. The music is provided by Purple Planet Music, and the art is done by myself. You can find me on Instagram at CandorDraw. That's KANDERDRAW. Thank you again to Brynn for joining me in discussing Nausicaa, and I'm looking forward to chatting with her on our YouTube live stream August 7th at 7 p.m. Central. We hope you can join us there to watch Wizard's Tales of Arcadia. Now, until next time, stay tuned and stay animated. Live as if the toxic jungle is here and now, people. Wear your masks.
Because it is? We should just go out. We should make a Nausicaa cosplay and just walk around with like that gas mask looking thing on and a dress and see if anybody understands the reference. That'd be awesome.
That would be awesome.